Hi, welcome to Fundamentally Different, our new podcast exploring innovation and issues in public services. So welcome today, great to have you here. I'm Ailsa, part of the capacity team, and today we're going to be talking all things social investment, so the fuel and the cash that's making change in communities that we need. So I'm really pleased to be joined by two people who are leading Liverpool City Region's thinking about social investment and support for socially trading organisations. So welcome to our guests, Joanne Anderson and Erika. Nice to meet you both. And I'll start just with a quick intro to Jo, who many listeners might know. She's founder of Innervision, the first Black-led social enterprise in Liverpool, and also the former mayor of Liverpool, the first woman to be mayor of the city and the first Black woman to be directly elected mayor in the UK. Joanne is also founder of Blast, a local network to support Black-led socially traders. And I couldn't skip mentioning they've also been named by Vogue on its influential 25 list in 2021. So welcome.
Thank you, Ailsa.
And Erika is the programme director of Kindred, the organisation supporting growth of the socially trading community across Liverpool City Region. Previous winner of Northern Power Women's Transformation Award, Inside Northwest Property Game Changer Award, and is listed as NatWest's National 100 Wise Women. And I believe Jo's also a 100 Wise Woman as well.
I think that happened recently, didn't it? Yeah. I've done it with your help, I think.
Yeah. So lots of accolades, lots going on with both of you. Brilliant that you could come and join us today to talk all things social investment. So I guess just to dive in, I think we all agree and know that there's some really big challenges in the city region in terms of public service delivery in our communities, housing, health, in lots of other areas. And, you know, people are at the centre of those challenges. We've got loads of talented, brilliant leaders working day in, day out to build organisations and make change in the areas that really matter to them. Keen to explore today how those organisations can access the funding and investment they need to really make the changes that they know they want to drive. So that's what we want to focus on. And although social investment isn't new, there's a bit of a revolution, maybe a revolution even, taking place locally, and you two are key in driving some of that. So it'd be great to explore that together. So I guess coming to you, Erika, first, in terms of disrupting what's happening, can you tell us a bit about Kindred, why, what it's achieving, and what else it needs to do?
Yeah. So I suppose when I first came across social investment, you can go to the bank and borrow some money, or you can look for a grant. And I wasn't aware that there was anything much in between. And social investment is meant to be a sort of repayable form of money that is easier than the bank. But when I came across it, I thought, well, that's a bit greedy, because they want their money back and they want outputs. So not only do they want what the bank wants, but they also want what the grant funder wants. And there was quite a lot of social investment available nationally, but it wasn't really being used in the region. In fact, funds were going underspent, and I now know that's the case nationally. And so we went out and talked to about 150 people who were running social enterprises, socially trading organisations, or limited companies that had a social purpose, people who were doing good things in St Helens, in Kirkby, in Birkenhead, in Runcorn, right around the city region, and got people together in each of those places and said, what is it you need to grow the impact of what you do? And really what those people did was they redesigned money on their terms. And at first that felt really shocking, because actually what people said is we want free and subsidised money. And I thought, we're never going to get away with that. But actually, as I took that back to the people who made the decisions, it turned out that lots of people get free and subsidised money, including most of the private sector in the country. And so this wasn't anything new that people were asking for, particularly because they were asking for it in those places where most businesses had exited, where more than normal numbers of people were unemployed, and where inherited wealth was on the floor. So people didn't have that leg up that you need to get something going. So that's why I got involved in social investment.
Great. And where is it now in terms of Kindred? And what's it delivering now?
Okay. So where we're up to now is we were awarded as Kindred LCR 6.5 million from Liverpool City Region Combined Authority and Power to Change. And about 4.5 million of that goes out as investment. And that was a pilot. That was to see whether the evidence we'd put together about the difference people were making in their communities and the money they needed, whether that could work. We asked, the evidence said we needed 32 million and we got 6.5. And that doesn't go far when you think the average investment is 40 grand. But we got that 6.5 and actually the impact is really powerful. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But the people who've had that money and are making a difference are making not only a difference for the companies they work with, they're clustering together in those places and other people are joining in at no cost to Power to Change, the Combined Authority or anybody else. Businesses are creating businesses because that's what an economy is. It's about you trading with me trading with you, us trading with them. That's how you build an economy. And that confidence and bringing that confidence back, I suppose, is my purpose in life.
Brilliant. That's really interesting to say. And that ability for those organisations to work off each other and share, build relationships and generate that fire, I guess, in those areas is critical, isn't it? And I don't know if you want to come in, Jo, and say a little bit about how you're seeing that develop.
When Kindred kicked off and I was marginally involved and, I turned up to the workshops and, put people forward for the workshops and stuff to co-design the financial products. More recently, I'm completing a master's, so I've looked up some research, academically. And what we were doing or what Kindred was doing has been said for years is what needed to happen. Public sector money needs to contribute to the Kindred building a pipeline, supporting that pipeline. People need to fund and resource that. They need blends of finance. People talk about co-design and co-creation a lot without doing that at all. That was co-designed and co-created. And so for social investment, or what I've seen across the country, Kindred is really special with the 0% fine. Some of the interesting things that I was no longer involved, but, Erika talked to me about when we ask people to pay back in social impact, so effectively a grant, sort of whatever the figure was. Actually, if people got more grant, they were much more likely to pay the money back and things like that. Things that make sense.
That enable it.
So I think there's always been a perception. I've just also been in, I first was, I sat on the board of Bulky Bob's, Blackburn House. I was first involved in social enterprises back in 2000. And I felt there was always a perception that it wasn't run as a business and it wasn't, they're not able to pay back in the sense that traditional business does and all those sorts of things. And I think what Kindred's done blows all that out the water, all those stereotypes of what social businesses are. In fact, what I see is a lot of professionalism in those small organisations who've got to rob pieces to pay Paul, get so much done with a little bit of money and also have a massive impact on some of our most disadvantaged communities. I personally think, and I'm a bit of a purist around this, I think all businesses need to have a social purpose. That would be my utopia, that, every business adds an economic impact as well as a social impact.
Yeah, brilliant.
And I think it's when you offer grant, the people who step forward are the people who can spend grant. And what I discovered by offering repayable grant, which is in effect what Kindred offers, even though that is subsidised with some that's paid back in social return rather than financial return, actually it's a completely different group of people that step forward. And I remember saying really early on to one young woman who had an idea and we were saying, we want to invest in it. And I apologised. I said, I'm really sorry, it's repayable money. And she said, oh, don't be sorry. One, I believe in my business enough to make it work. Two, I want to pay that money back because I want somebody else to have the opportunity you're giving me. But three, you believe in my business enough to put the money in. And that's important to me. And so I stopped apologising for social investment because it's opening up a seam of people in communities. I think one of the things that when I arrived in the city, which was 30 plus years ago at the City Region, actually confidence was really low. The narrative, which has existed for 30 years, was you're the poorest, you're the neediest, you're the most deprived. What you need is a grant from government or an investor coming over the hill to save you. But what that did was make us feel we were not capable of doing this ourselves. And actually the people who are stepping forward in communities are the people who are going, do you know what, we can do some of this ourselves. We're not the entire difference maker. It's not that other things aren't required, but it's an important part of any local economy. And most of those people are driven by a lived experience. So, for example, there's a woman in Knowsley who was a child carer of somebody with dementia. And she runs an alternative dementia day centre now because she knows that if you're looking after somebody with dementia all night and all day with nowhere to take them in the day, your life is nearly impossible. So she runs a day centre, and in fact, she's just opened a second because of an asset transfer from Knowsley Council. Whoa. Yeah. Similarly, at the other end of the scale, Craig in Birkenhead was moaning on to me that there was no music venue in Birkenhead. And I said, well, you know, 300 quid was the first investment in Craig to bring some people together to talk about whether a music venue is needed. And that group of musicians began to share what they had. Some had expertise, some had a private music studio, some were quite famous, so had a little bit of a resource. And they shared what they had to first put on a network of gigs. Then he got £3,000. That allowed a bit more. Then he put on a festival, proved there was a demand and he could get people to Birkenhead to listen to music. Roll on, it's probably 4 years now with Craig. He employs between 40 and 50 people. He runs a music venue in Birkenhead where everybody said it wasn't feasible. And around him, a whole network of other businesses, a pottery, a bakery, a bargain booze, and God knows what else has opened. And that place is beginning to happen.
From the place, yeah. So that sort of sense of starting small, bringing the right people around it, bringing those networks and relationships together is really the agent for change there, the thing that's making things go.
I think it's Erika's approach. Erika has impacted Kindred in that approach, but what it allows people, I think, is the step-by-step thing.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've discovered or I've learned is people who come in with grand ideas that I've got this fantastic business idea, it needs 2 million quid to get it started and thinking. And what we see is loads of people just getting on with doing it with no money and just giving them a little bit. And so their confidence increases, their confidence to borrow money increases is really helpful. But I think that's an approach that Erika has that, is adopted within Kindred, but is really helpful in building confidence in, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
It reduces risk, really. You know, people say, oh, socially trading organisations, social enterprises, they're very risky. Well, we're slowly building evidence that they're not. 90% of ours are repaying, and evidence from Europe suggests that that's pretty consistent. These are not high-risk businesses because people have put their lives and livelihoods into them. They're not going to let them fail. They're always going to find a way, even if it means dramatic shifts and changes. I've lost my thread now. I can't remember what you said.
Well, I wanted to pick up on what you said about bringing, using Craig as an example, but bringing that network of people together. And I know, Jo, you've done a lot of work in the Blast network. So I just wondered whether it was worth just talking about that and why that's important.
Well, I think the trusted relationship is really important. And it's also, I'm going to talk later perhaps about what I've been involved in doing nationally. But obviously, working Innervision was an equality consultancy that specialised in race. So I had a reputation over 25 years of being someone you could trust when it comes to, working together as a black organisation, because often I see quite extractive relationships with black organisations. Oh, we want to find out this about the black community and we want to be the great white saviour to the black community. That's happened quite a lot in Liverpool. People parachuting in and, the community being left with nothing really, and then being pitched against each other from funding regimes and stuff like that. So I, obviously set up a black social enterprise back in 2000. I did get investment, but they wanted me to take a bank loan as well. And Claire Dove was my chair at the time. And I remember thinking, and I'd never took a foot wrong in the business. We always made a profit, even if it was a little one. I never relied on grant funding. I couldn't stand the process. I'd prefer to do a day's work and get a day's pay. But that felt risky to me, because if I mess up on this, now I owe money, and then, it's not just my reputation, Claire does my chair and that sort of thing. So I was averse to taking investment. So I completely understand what social enterprise is going through. And, the peer-to-peer relationship we have at Kindred and Blast and everywhere else, we've all been through. We're all businesses ourselves. We all understand the challenges. So immediately that's a trusted relationship. And then someone who's going to, from a race perspective, be protective of people trying to exploit others, enables, a trusted relationship before we even get started. But I had known Erika from 2017, and then when COVID happened, I lost all my work straight away. And I was a local councillor in Liverpool 8, and I was really worried. The first week I just spent all my time doing counselling work, and then I was like, I can't live on £10,000 a year. I've got to try. Anyway, Erika offered me some work, but I don't think, even though we'd known each other for a couple of years by then, I don't think she knew what I did, all my backgrounds and stuff. So we were like, it was really good us coming together. My background's equality, Erika's got a background in equality as well, but, coming together and having sort of similar values, and the whole team that was built during COVID. The first investment round, 33% who went forwards initially were from Black and ethnic minority organisations. And Erika sort of said, that's your contribution there. I can see that has impacted. So we got some money to set up a Black social traders network from a national organisation called Unlimited. And from that, I think I knew 20 of the 25 people on the first pilot for the Black Social Traders Network, and just bringing them together. And it was in COVID, we weren't meeting face to face, just talking together. There was an award that they could have, and all that is just a bit of help, isn't it? So educating people around what socially trading organisations were with somebody trusted. And I think some of the trusted relationship I find from this is before I was mayor, was the sense that Joanne will help me no matter what job she's in. It's not just about she's here now working for Kindred. I think Gunan interviewed me when I first became mayor, and she said, you've got about 9 email accounts from different organisations. I have worked for those, or done consultancy for organisations, but just a presence that's always going to be around despite what job I've got on. So I think that is helpful. People know that if they're in trouble, they come to me. And then obviously there's a bit of recognition with the fact that I was mayor, and the Black community being very supportive. So we held an event yesterday on a different contract that I'm doing for Liverpool City Region. I'm launching a course for 20 Black businesses, but 55 Black and ethnic minority businesses come to that event. Not people I'd seen before, and not our network. We've already got a network with Blast. Most of them had a social impact and didn't know that they had a social impact. Right. Well, it's just what you do. I've been thinking probably far too deeply about this, about why do we care about this in Liverpool? Why is it that, we're all kinds of a little bit obsessed with social businesses, wanting to do good to others, having a purpose with not just making money for yourself. And then I think growing up in Liverpool, surrounded by sort of lack of wealth and inequality, people who've got nothing want to help others. So I think there's a culture of Liverpool of wanting to help each other. I think when people who are Black, there's a culture of might not get the best time in a paid employment that I can't control, that I work for someone else. But if I'm doing good, I want to help other Black people. And so I think there's a knock-on effect with that is just natural, even though someone's setting up a traditional business and they don't know about social business. And so that was really interesting for me. But, with our plans and what we've got, that's great that there is that demand there of people across the region who are doing great businesses, not knowing about social investment. And the other thing, I think, Erika, you picked up on social investment then about, it is a bit of a cheek. You've got to pay back a return and then you've got to pay back on social impact. It is meant to be for those people who can't get bank loans. And when social businesses go to banks, they don't get it. And you've got to jump through a whole load of hoops and you've got to fit their criteria perfectly. Gunan, again, was speaking yesterday and she talks about the language that was used at Kindred really making a difference. We don't use the terminology of bankers when you come to social investment. We don't ask you to fill in a grant form on the internet. we have a personal relationship with you, and I think that is what gives people confidence as well. But the trusted relationship, I've only been able to articulate recently, you can't buy that. It's massive in what we do.
Yeah. The relationship element of it, the human face, the relationships, the, being able to see each other and understand each other is so important, isn't it? And I guess a question would be, how do we build those relationships in a bigger system with, different investors, people who perhaps they move on to after Kindred or, where they get rid of. How do we build those relationships across investors, local authorities, social trading organisations, people with ideas? What would you share on that?
I think there's bigger questions to be asked on that. I think there has been an obsession with scaling up everything.
Yeah.
And some things work at scale. So maybe a transport system works at scale. But does care work at scale? Or does the food you buy work at scale if it kills the planet? Or, so I think there is an opportunity to think whether scale and growth are the right words that we're using. We were talking before, you were talking about social business and how lots of the businesses in the room didn't even know they were social until they started talking. But when we first started with Kindred, we talked about local and social businesses. And the thing about local and social businesses is you probably have to look your customers and your competitors or collaborators in the eye at some point. Yeah. So you're not going to rip them off because they won't come back. You're only going to rip them off if you can holiday in the Virgin Islands or bank in the Cayman Islands or not see or face those people that you have extracted all the money from. So I think there's a real argument for local and social businesses, and I'm less convinced by scale. I think a lot of things need to descale, degrow, be broken down into human components. Wards in hospitals might be better run as wards rather than, logistics operations like it's a factory floor. I don't know anything about hospitals, so I'll make my words on that one. But you get what I mean? I think that there is a place for not growing everything. Having said that, I think multiplication, replication, things happening because of things and how economies work. Economies work on confidence. The economy is a confidence trick. And when confidence goes, there's a run on the banks. So you have a confident community, people will trade and work with each other. So going back to that relationship thing, you want a healthy economy, you have to have relationships. You have to be able to look your customer in the eye and say, I'm not ripping you off today and I'll be here again tomorrow. And you won't have gone home with rotten tomatoes.
I feel a little bit differently, I think. I think I'm doing a master's on scale up, and there was good learning for me about organic growth compared to scale up. Scale up might be you want to franchise around the whole country. Organic growth as well. Well, I'm in Liverpool, I might want to go to Knowsley. That's kind of people, the obsession with growth I kind of agree with. But I've had some interesting kinds of eureka moments on this scale-up course. So a traditional business curve is, start-up, survival, delegation, scale-up, and then sell your business. And a lot of social enterprises nationally are that big. And I see all that they, where they're going and when they borrow equity or when they get into a relationship with social investment about equity, the kinds of just taking risks and gambles on these businesses that have some social impact. And I'm not doing their social impact in. I just don't see much of that locally. I think we're really social impact first. And so the difference with a social enterprise, they start off with an issue that they're passionate about. They have a theory of change, they make a difference, and then they collaborate with others in order to have systematic changes. The goal, that's not the same curve as in a traditional business. So I was kind of, oh my God, we're all stuck in survival mode. One, because many of us are founders, so the delegation bit's hard. We're not growing businesses in order to sell on. We're growing businesses because we're passionate and we want to make a difference. So I think there is scalable social enterprise, and we should do that. And we'll be able to support that, I think, with more investment, which is what we want. But there's lots of organic growth and an understanding from people that actually they only want to be here because they don't really want to say, they don't want to sell the business on. It's systematic change, which is much harder to achieve than making loads of money. But I think Erika's experience in Baltic as well, I think, of clustering people, of then, as a community rather as individuals, has impacted Kindred. Now we think about Kindred, and I think that's the scale. We're much more comfortable scaling in that way as a community than saying, right, we're going to franchise.
Yeah, and scaling as a community or growth that isn't revenue or headcount growth can still be really important growth, can't it? In terms of impact or staff growth or personal growth. There's loads of different angles.
Productivity
there's loads of different angles, isn't there, of different
and actually
bits of the coin.
Yeah, Kindred is measured at the Combined Authorities suggestion. Our purpose is to grow the impact. So we're not. Actually, they're very interested in how many jobs we create, and they're very interested in people's growth of turnover and all that kind of thing, because they in turn have to report to government on that. But actually our core purpose and what they commissioned us to do was grow the impact of socially trading organisations. So the numbers of people that Open Door Charity is helping with mental health is increased, or the numbers of people that Cycle a Life and eBay are getting out of the house and into the fresh air and on their bikes is increased. So it's that impact, whether eBay does that as a sort of one-person band or employs 50 people to do it, might not be the difference in the numbers of people he impacts. So that is of less importance.
Sure. I also think, though, I'm really concerns about the lack of understanding of a national and local government level on what social investment can do and the impact that it can have. We had to compete locally with advanced manufacturing and all the kinds of national government lingo around economic growth, and sort of I've heard it being called the bottom-up approach and stuff like that. It's just like really missing a trick on understanding that the impact that social businesses can have are economic, does have an economic impact. It does tick your boxes with, double the amount of jobs and double the head turnover. That does happen as well. But also those issues that are getting tackled where we can't afford to deliver the services we used to are getting tackled at the same time. And I just don't think, I can count on two hands the amount of politicians I think who really get it. And that's quite worrying, because I think we just get caught up in this. I think, Rachel Reeves has talked about, non-stop growth and stuff. We just get caught up in this cycle of the terminology around growth, instead of the kinds of organic growth and the community-led, community wealth building kinds of growth that, social investment
that we've
can
seen
do.
make a massive difference in our local communities. And I guess just building on that in terms of system change and what needs to happen in the broader context locally. I know we've been working on the Social Investment Pathfinder. I don't know if it's worth sharing some thoughts on that and the opportunity that presents for us.
Do you want to?
Yeah. I think, so as I said, Kindred was a pilot. And I think £6.5 million sounded like a lot of money, and we thought we could be all things to all people everywhere. Done. But of course it went really quickly, and I think we started off talking to 150 people. We've got 1,000 members now. That is bigger, I think, than any Chamber of Commerce in the region. So that's 1,000 people across the city region who have a business that they describe as social in some way. That's not even the people who don't recognise they're not social, who have an aspiration to grow their impact. So the Pathfinder really is saying we can use more money. We can use more money to grow the economy. So it is in the long term less dependent on grants from government or inward investors or whatever, so that it can grow its economy itself in a way that is more sustainable. And yes, that requires investment, but actually lots of that investment is repaid, not all of it, about 75%. And yes, there is a cost to doing that. But having worked in this business for 35 years, I've watched huge amounts of money be spent incredibly badly to make not a blind bit of difference in Everton or Toxteth or Birkenhead or Kirkby or St Helens, Rainhill or, those places have not shifted in their relative deprivation. And what I see, I can't promise it'll make a difference, but the evidence suggests that this makes a more sustainable difference. So the Pathfinder is an ambition to secure 50 million instead of 6.5 million, so that we can do more with more people in more places.
And the research by the Heseltine Institute talks, again, not just of, I think the first research was done, said 30 million. The second piece of research is around people needing space and property to grow. And now it was interesting, the businesses I was talking to yesterday all talked about needing space, needing, in order to grow, needing that. It's a massive, for most organisations, it's a massive part of their growth plan. So we're doing a piece of work in the property Pathfinder that is focused on property and trying to come up with a solution of how we help people access properties in the region, because working with local authorities is really tough. As you know, I'm sure you've got more experience than I have, to be honest, in doing that capacity. We have assets all over the city region in the most deprived communities that we can't utilise as local authorities. We can't invest in them. They'd be much better off in the hands of the community who would regenerate the place and make a positive impact. And the bureaucracy getting to do that is really difficult. But the property piece won't just be about that. And it's not just local authorities who've got assets, but it really can. We're there to prove, and we can do it. And what we've seen already is we can transform communities that are the most deprived by putting people in there who know what to do within their community and know how to uplift their community. And the thing I see when I talk about social investment is I see communities who can be impacted. So I always like your analysis around equality. Doing a bit of research, as I say, I'm finishing this master's. Black people act the same as social enterprises, act the same as women when it comes to this sort of story and investment. They're often in places that no one else wants to be. They have barriers when they're trying to access investment to grow. They have their own barriers around confidence because they've been told, they've got a story that, or a narrative that they won't succeed at this, or money's not for them, it's for people who understand how money works, that sort of thing. So being able to inspire confidence in those people and showing the way, because that's what we do. We hold hands, I think, in terms of showing the way. And that's really important to people, much more than we realise. And not everything goes right, and we aren't the fountains of all knowledge. But, somebody being able to go with Erika yesterday to look at a property that they've been searching for 3 years, but Erika knows so much about property and is able to ask the right kinds of questions. When you're and this are her words, when you're running your own business or your social enterprise and you just, you're grafting all the time, you've got no one to make those decisions with. It's a lonely experience, actually, as leadership can often be. But having someone who you've got a trusted relationship with, who knows a lot more than you about property, to say, this is the one, that is invaluable, isn't it? And again, not something you can go, when we're seeking investment or when we're seeking the 50 million, that's hard stuff to quantify how you pay for that. And I think what we have got, though, is a load of committed, passionate people who would do it, whether they were getting paid to do it or not, wanting to help people. And
maybe two things to add around the Pathfinder. That pilot that was Kindred, or that is Kindred, only used public and charitable money. And I think what the Pathfinder presents is an opportunity to use and demonstrate to private money, to investable money, that this is an opportunity to invest in people who won't let the business down, won't let them down, have got a track record of repayment because we can show it, and create markets in other places that they can then tap into and do other things in. And there's no shortage of money in the world.
No. Easy one,
we just want a little bit of it. But if we can demonstrate using the assistance, the combined authority has been really brave in this and took a step that no other combined authority in the country took by saying, we're going to give this a go, we're going to put this money in, we're not just going to lend you it, we're going to give you it so that people can repay it and you can use it again and again. And that's been massively empowering for the community who feels that's their money. And of course they're going to pay it back because it's their money and they won't want to come back for some more, or they won't want their kids or their aunties or their relatives or their neighbours to come and get some. So that trusted relationship that Joanne talks about is actually what keeps that fund going. Well, that's a good deal for an investor. That's pretty low risk. So part of the challenge for Pathfinder is to tempt some of that private money in. And why we're calling it a Pathfinder is because Lord Victor Adebowley, who came to the city at the invitation of Joanne, did a report into social investment that said this money isn't really doing what it was intended to do. It could work harder. It could do more. And when he saw what capacity, what School for Social Entrepreneurs, what the network of people in this city were doing, he said, whoa, you've got all the ingredients here to be the UK's social investment pathfinder, to demonstrate in a place what can really happen when investment is applied for good purpose. And that's the idea of the pathfinder, is we will experiment here, but we know there are 7, 9, 15, 25 other places up and down the country where in pockets people are similarly experimenting. So we would like to be part of a national Pathfinder programme.
To connect and learn
from each other, that the kind of economy we're building in this country isn't the one that we've ended up with, isn't the one that we kind of all go, that's just the way it has to be, that's how commerce works, that we're working to cut towards the kind of economy that we want our kids and their kids to be part of. That is something where everybody has a job if they want one, everybody has a role and purpose in their community, and what people take out, they put back. You know, whether that's social, environmental, there's a cost to the things we use in this place. So let's make sure that our businesses put some of that back for the next generation. Bit idyllic, that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, it is, but I think, when Lord Victor Chris Murray, who chairs the Pathfinder, I think suggested to Lord Victor to host the launch of his research here because of what we were doing up here. Lord Victor talks a lot in the report about it not working for Black people. And what he says is that people have, different, intersectionality of people, but, Black people I'm going to focus on, because if we can get it to work for Black people and get it to work for everyone, I think was kind of his mentality around that. But really going at the system and saying it's not working for the social businesses that it's intended for. And now Lord Victor is the chair of Social Enterprise UK, has ran a number of large social enterprises in health, and so is very experienced when it comes to this sector. And I think, he's absolutely right. And I think one of the things I think that we're learning as we're going, because we thought everything that we were doing was completely new, and then Lord Victor launched a research report that said everything that we were saying. So we were laying the track as we go, as we thought, but then it really opens us up to the larger. So we've been told we can't get what we want. People have been naysaying about this 50 million that we want in the Pathfinder for our place-based investment, because we want it recycled back into Liverpool City Region. But then when we ask, so how much gets recycled back into London? Well, 75% gets recycled back to London. So why couldn't we have the same principle? Why couldn't we? We talk about transport systems in London, don't we? If we all had buses that were operated like Transport for London, we'd all be happy sitting on the bus, kind of thing. We can, the same principles apply, but Liverpool doesn't often even get mentioned when it comes to social enterprise. And actually what we're doing here is really innovative. And so having Lord Victor as our patron has been really helpful, because with his backing, he sees it across the country. People are trying to sort of copy off some of the things that we're doing, but there's certain principles that need to be understood. So one is the money from the CA is really instrumental. So public sector money is really instrumental. But I would say, with my previous hat on, from a public sector perspective, this is much more bang for your buck than some of the other big infrastructure and developments that we get into that promise the earth and then don't deliver. We didn't make too many promises, but what we promised, we've doubled and, done much more than we said we would. And in terms of understanding how money works, working class people do not get to know that. I can get to 50 years of age and not know about venture capitalism and equity deals. And, you know, we don't know that about how to have business growth or how that's how people borrow money to go. I can't see us ever really getting into equity too much in Liverpool City Region, because I just think it's our mentality around, well, I could borrow 10 grand off you now and grow my business and pay you back, or I could take a risk and if my business does well, I have to give you 50 grand. I can't see us getting our heads around that, but still, that's how some deals work. But, you know, the whole system around how money works, we don't get taught that. And if you're a working class person, you can go through your whole life never learning that. And so us being able to show people this is how money works if you want to grow from a place of, you know, Kindred is a pipeline. Kindred's not asking someone to borrow £2 million. We're not encouraging people to borrow who don't want to borrow. We don't do any of that. But if people want to grow the business, we support them. But it comes a point where you need investment in order to grow. But we are a social investor. We're not a business support agency, even though we do those sorts of things that help people, you know, trust relationship and hold hands. This is about getting the right kinds of money to the right people in the right way that they need it.
Yeah. I think that right money, right time, right people, right way is the crux of this, isn't it? And it, you know, it feels like the Pathfinder, Kindred, the other work we're doing in communities and that Joe, you're doing through Blast and things, feels like it's making a move towards making that more simple. But, you know, it's hard. There's partnerships to be built. There's things to do, but it feels like it's moving in the right direction. And
I think a bit like Craig, who I described, who had 300 quid, then 3,000 quid, then 30,000 quid and whatever he's got now. In the same way Kindred is making that move, we've started relatively small for an investment fund. But I did some numbers before I came and started imagining the Pathfinder. And, you know, as I said, we started with 150 members. We've made about some little, some big, but around 70 investments. Around 40 of those are chunky investments, average of about £40,000. But what people do with that in 3-4 years, on average, they create 3 jobs. On average, they increased their turnover by 115,000. And so I started to imagine, well, what if just half that 1,000 membership did that? And what that starts to look at is 4,500 jobs within 10 years and 170 million turnover in Kirkby and St Helens and Birkenhead. And that's just what they're doing. That doesn't account for that cascade effect they have. Well, actually, that doesn't cost a lot of money. To do that for 1,000 members only costs 20 million and 15 of that gets paid back. It's quite cheap relative to the millions I've seen spent on city challenges and SRBs and urban development corporations and all of those things.
There's only a few winners in those things, I think, as well. That's the other thing. There's only a few winners in them things.
And a lot of buildings.
Yeah.
So the reach is critical, isn't it, in terms of unlocking that potential in the communities that we know there and the leaders who want to make the change for the things that they're really passionate about.
And I think that's communities of place and communities of interest. You know, we talk quite a lot about black people, about women, and you could sort of kind of say, well, why? But actually, when you look at traditional investment, and people debate a bit about the numbers, but in terms of women, they get about, some people say 2%, some people say 7% of all investment. In terms of black people, it's 0.02 or 0.07%. That means there's some other people who are getting 97%
all of it.
I'm glad you've done investment before you came out.
But actually, it's important to say those other people might be men, and they might be white, but they don't even include working class white men in the main. Actually, it's a very small number of people who are getting that 97%. We only want a couple of percent of it. We're not asking for a lot here to make a lot of difference and to supply that percentage with a lot more customers, with money to spend, so they can make a bit more money. So everybody's a winner.
While we're focused on this though, and you know, we're getting this into the city region, we haven't done the research, but there is a question to be asked about how many businesses can help tackle some of the issues in public services. From a contracting perspective, you know, again, from my former role, it's a nightmare to sort of contracts outside of someone who's, a massive organisation who can do things on a massive scale that has lots of research, when actually local delivery would be much better. The stuff that Capacity done around care homes, was very welcomed in the region amongst the leaders. This is the kind of stuff we want to see. But actually, the getting from A to B and the bureaucracy that you have to face and get through, I would like to see much more interaction with, public authorities, with social businesses, even if it's, it doesn't have to be the local authority. It could be, the uniforms being washed at the fair. I'm sure they wash their own uniforms, but you know what I mean? I'm trying to come up with things. Yeah. You've got a list, haven't you, I think, of social businesses that would...
loads of ideas.
That would be great. But I think this is something that would really help from our place-based perspective. Yeah. Not just, we're doing all this work on the ground and we're bubbling up this pipeline and then we're helping people to grow. One of the ways they can grow is by delivering and fixing some of the problems within our public sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great place. I'm conscious of time and the need to wrap up soonish, but that's a great place for me to ask my sort of final question about your, the thing that makes you most excited about solutions in public service and in the investment space. So if I could come to you, Erika, first, what's most exciting for the next sort of 12, 18 months?
I'm a bit like a kid in a sweet shop, really. So I find that the ideas and the approaches that what I call social traders across the city region come up with to the problems they face or the opportunities they see are things that those of us who've worked in institutions all our life would never dream of.
Yeah.
And so it's that social innovation. I often use an outfit called Airborne Academy as my example. So that was a group of 4 street runners who were looking for money because they were passionate about street running. And had anybody gone out with a contract to say, we want to tackle obesity, or we want to get kids who aren't in education back into education, or any of those things, they would not have stepped forward. They stepped forward because they were passionate about street running and they wanted to teach other kids how to street run and chuck themselves off walls and buildings and roofs. We took the risk and we invested in them. And they got 1,000 kids through their door every week as paying customers. They are a viable, albeit by the skin of their teeth, enterprise down on the Dock Road, who continue to teach people street running, tackle obesity, gets kids back into education, lobbied nationally so that street running is now on the Olympic listing or whatever it is. They do all kinds of things, get kids into other sports. But they didn't set out to deliver a public service contract. Yeah. They set out about something they saw, they experienced, they lived, and they were passionate about. And that's where social innovation is coming from. And that really excites me. We just need to invest in it.
Yeah, great. And Jo?
So I suppose what Erika was saying before about the sort of poverty narrative growing up in Liverpool, there's that narrative within Black and ethnic minority communities, in the 88 most deprived boroughs across the country, the gap for, African and, Caribbean children doesn't change, Chinese communities might do well at school or Asian communities might do better depending on where they live. But that sort of narrative around, it's hard for a young Black person growing up and looking at the future. 1, the lack of role models, but 2, the sort of narrative that says you'll always be poor and disadvantaged because, you're a certain colour is ridiculous, isn't it? So having the opportunity to reach those communities and give them another option, which is run their own business and have a good impact on their community, feel good about themselves, make money, that kind of thing. The rest of my time and my purpose is about trying to take a community that's, described as the most disadvantaged and deprived in a lot of ways, and ensuring if they want to have another option, that there's a helpful organisation that will help them do that.
Brilliant. It's been really brilliant talking to you. It's been great to hear the ideas and some of the inspirational stories. So thanks so much for making time. It's been really interesting. I guess all that leaves me to do is to sort of wrap up and say thanks for listening to Fundamentally Different. Thanks so much for coming on. More information about Kindred, Pathfinder, Capacity and everybody else in the podcast notes, and look out for more. Yeah. Thanks very much, both of you.
Thanks for inviting us.